welcome to a fantastic podcast, first of its kind. So this summer is pretty incredible, isn't it, David? We got some unbelievable auctions.
Yes, pressure's on.
Pressure's on. All centred around, obviously, the World Cup. 4 years has gone already, and here we are again. And we got some unbelievable items you can see around the God Shilton shirt, which some people like to celebrate.
But more importantly, Scotland's made it this time. So but we're there. We're actually there.
Are you going to have a song again?
They've got to do a song, yeah.
It's never long enough to get in the charts.
B. Robert said that's the one this time. No, we've got it'll be Rod Stewart, I think, this time.
Really? Not Delamitri?
No, Delamitri, not them.
So look, yeah, we've got an incredible summer ahead of us and we're really excited. And as I say, we've got some super items. Martin Peters' second shirt there from the final as well. So, you know, a host of great stuff. And more importantly, an amazing guest today. So talk us through that, David.
Well, I'd like to welcome a man who's made a unique in history of the World Cup football. Back 30th of July 1966, he scored a World Cup hat-trick in front of 100,000 people. Her Majesty the Queen and his teammates scored his fourth goal, beating the Germans 4-2 at Wembley to secure England's World Cup victory that afternoon. Can I welcome Sir Geoff Hurst?
Hello, hi.
Geoff, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Nice to see you again. We go back a wee bit, you and I.
Yes, we do.
We do.
I think we all go back a wee bit, I guess, in many respects.
Fortunately, yeah. Is it difficult for you to say that, mate, England winning the World Cup?
Not at all. No. I'm a football
Don't get a lump
fan.
in your throat, no.
You know, it's given me some good commission over the years, so you can't be cross.
There you go.
And I have to say, as a Scotsman, I'm probably one of the only Scotsmen to hold a World Cup winners' medal from every competition since 1930.
Wow.
Not many Scotsmen can say that. Granted, nothing to do with my country winning it sort of thing, but I felt one up, so not a bad bit of history. Geoff, you've been asked a million times. Let me ask you again. Tell me about that afternoon at Wembley in 1966.
Well, it's incredible. I think amazing the fact we haven't done it since. I think as a major nation, you think we'd won the World Cup at least a couple of times. So it's still talked about today. I still get mail from all over the world. It's quite remarkable. Just an absolutely magnificent day. I think the team side of it was fantastic. The team spirit. Alf Ramsey over 3 years had got a bunch of players together, kicked out people who didn't want to be part of it, who I think were not quite team related, and just the remarkable game itself, and scoring a hat-trick, which hasn't been done since. Well, Mbappe's got 3, but they got beat, and 2 of them were penalties, so that doesn't count.
They don't count, do they?
They don't count, no. Yes, quite a remarkable day when you think about it. First time we won it, and the only time we won it. Just an absolutely magnificent day. And people still talk to me today, my generation, telling me where they were and what they were doing on the date. I mean, it is quite remarkable. It's such an important aspect of all supporters' life, not just football supporters. It's a national thing. It's not just the sport. When somebody, a team like that, and football's a big game anyway, it's a huge thing for the nation to be involved with.
And in the morning, obviously, who did you room with?
Martin Peters, my
teammate there.
Teammate, roommate, West Ham mate, yes. Next door neighbour.
As well. Good night's sleep, nervous? Well, did you know when your heart of hearts are going to win it? Did you have that gut feeling that players do sometimes?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wasn't overly, obviously there's a certain amount of tension building up when you come into a huge game like that, but I wouldn't say I was overly nervous or lost any sleep, just approached it. I didn't start the tournament, really. The first 3 games, Jimmy Greaves started, didn't get into the quarter-final. So I think, but at the quarter-final stage, when I scored the goal against Argentina, I really felt I was then part of the squad. I felt prior to that I was second choice, although I was never disappointed not to start. It was never in my radar, that. So just quite amazing to still talk about it today. Really, the team aspect was the most important aspect. The camaraderie and friendship we had, it wasn't just football. We played golf together 15, 20 years after the World Cup final. There was a huge togetherness, which is important. The team aspect in sport and in life is absolutely vital to be successful. In business, a group of people working together with a common goal. And we had that in spades, really, with that fantastic team and players.
I love that. Can I go off piste a minute?
Of course.
You've mentioned the team spirit and the team togetherness 2 or 3 times already in the first few minutes. And I think about England over the years, in my time watching them, and that hasn't always been there. Most of the time it hasn't been there. We've had a team of individuals, we've had golden generations and all that nonsense. Do you think that's a little bit different at the minute? Because Tuchel seems to be leaving players out who you would ordinarily say, oh, Bellingham's got to be in the starting 11. There seems to be a bit more of a focus on who should be in that team because they're a team player, rather than necessarily the best number 10 or the best striker. Do you think that's happening a bit more now?
That's a good point you've raised. Really interesting you raised that point, because I really think that the way he dealt with Jude Bellingham, who seemed to got a bit above himself, and we had some of the best players ever in the Bobby Charlton, Bobby Moore, Gordon Banks, Jimmy Greaves, some of the greats ever. But none of them would sit there or stand there and think they were better than anybody else. Yeah. But that was the management side of it. And I do think over the years there's been some disappointments of the manager not looking at the team. But this particular aspect you raised with Jude Bellingham, I think, is an indication that there's some kind of team spirit there, and nobody's going to get out of order no matter how good they are. Yeah. And leaving him out when he was going to come back in, I think is a really significant move on how he's managing a group of players. Yeah. I really do. Interesting you raise that, because I feel strongly about that.
Well, I was going to say as well, managers, it makes the hope, they can think of, Matt Busby, Jock Stein, Sir Alf Ramsey, Jurgen Klopp, they obviously are the backbone of the team. And as you say, there's no prima donnas, back in that side, looking at over there. Only 11 players, no subs in those days. So you were on the pitch, you're on the pitch still for 90 minutes, right to the very end of it. And he just instilled in you, you're my team, you're my guys, you're going to go and do it, sort of thing. So.
Absolutely. I think that was, over those 3 years, the way he handled the discipline, we'll go back along, the discipline was much stricter and harsher in those, and doing something, if you did something like maybe coming to dinner late or afternoon tea 5 or 10 minutes would be quite a significant black mark against you. Why is he turning up? Just for something like that in that era. And I think that was something that was very important.
Yeah. And go back to obviously 66. So England wear white shirts. You get to the final. All of a sudden you're wearing red. Did you know you're wearing red before the auction, before the final, or were you told on the morning of?
No, we knew before. We understood that the Germans were white, we were white. I think it came down to a coin toss or something. Right. And they won it, and of course had their shirts. But what's really great about it, the only time we won it, we wear these famous red shirts.
Indeed.
That is also absolutely fantastic. When you see a red shirt, had it been a white shirt, you think, well, which year was that? Where the red shirt is so, and I signed hundreds of red shirts today. It's quite remarkable.
And I see most of them to be valued most days as well. So
it's just astonishing.
Well, you guys mentioned you back. We sold your collection 24 years ago, part of the collection anyway. And of course, at the time, the red number 10, iconic number 10, made a then world record price. And obviously satisfactory as it was at the time. So I said to you today, it was bought by a West Ham fan, bidding from Australia. I was panicking because of the time difference, but yeah, what were your feelings on that world record price for your shirt back in 2002?
It was amazing. It did surprise me. I mean, because auctions like that and the stuff that people buy in auction, it was a significant piece of auction material, without a shadow of a doubt. So it didn't surprise me. One or two people said, you shouldn't have sold it. You should have waited for 20 odd years. You get a lot more money for it. A funny story about that memorabilia and that shirt particularly. I spoke to my kids around that time, 3 daughters. If I'm no longer on this earth, what sort of things would you like? And I was really referring to the World Cup medal, the World Cup shirt, all the World Cup stuff. And my eldest daughter, God bless her, she said, Dad, I quite like that settee in the living room. So within 2 to 3 weeks, it had all gone. I mean, unbelievable. Yes, I said earlier, we're not a celebrity family, and I think that really sums it up.
That's great though, isn't it?
It's just
I love that.
Unbelievable.
I love that.
Well, I remember Judith had the charm bracelet. Lady Judith had the charm bracelet and had your European Cup Winners' Cup medal, FA Cup Winners' medal, and your World Cup Winners' medal on a charm bracelet wearing about town. I thought, well, how much is that actually worth? I mean, that's some serious bling.
I know, it's crazy. And when you remind me of that, it's absolutely unbelievable.
3 finals, one after the other. You know, Wembley, 3 winners. I mean, what an achievement, Craggy. I suppose that was the sort of fourth, hat trick of medals for a hat trick goal scorer. There you go.
Fantastic. Like, maybe you remind me of that. FA, the first time we'd been at Wembley since it was built about 100 years ago, we win the FA Cup, then the Cup Winners' Cup. Only the second time a club won a European trophy, mainly with English players, and then 3 players representing England from the, not just 3 players, the captain and both goal scorers. I mean, it's, when you think about it,
Crazy.
as Hammers fans say, England won the World Cup, West Ham won the World Cup, not England.
So to be a bit more sort of somber, and it's 60 years on, obviously you're the last man standing now. Talk to us about that. How's that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel very sad when I see it, as I see on a fairly regular basis, pictures of one or two of us, or together in a photograph, or the group of us, or the team photographs, even the piece over there, Wembley Park, with them looking over there now. It fills me with a great deal of sadness. What we went through, had a great camaraderie, great team spirit. We were together, not just for the final, but for many years later, golf days every year for 15 odd years. So yeah, it makes you feel very sad.
Yeah. Well, let's remember the good times and talk a bit more about the final, but let's go way back a little bit further than that. So you were a cricketer at the beginning, and you mentioned to me earlier about your first class game, but was there a moment in time and when cricket was an option for you? And if it was, how did you make that distinction? What made you say, no, I'm going to go with football?
Well, it's a good story. I mean, like a lot of kids at the time, I was involved and interested both 50% of the time cricket and 50% football. The issue was that it was very detrimental to the football side because cricket doesn't finish till September. The clubs are training mid-July. So I was coming back in 62, 63. I played for the seconds and one first class game against Lancashire at Aigburth in Liverpool. I got 0 and 0 not out.
How many balls you face?
I'm not sure, 1.5. I got not many. 2 catches and we won. Then I come back now in sort of late 62, around about September, October now, cricket season finished. I'm back playing in the reserves of West Ham, missed all the training, not fit. And on a Monday morning, Chapel Heath, our training ground, Ron Greenwood comes over. I think I'm going to get a bit of a volley, because I'm not playing well. I'm in the reserves and not fit. And he said, we're playing Liverpool tonight. I said, yeah, I know that, at Upton Park. He said, and I was a midfield player. Then centre half of school, a midfield player. He said, I want to try you up front against Liverpool. I went, okay. So I play Liverpool, we won 1-0. Tony Scott scored the winner. And from a standing start, in a new position, not fit, that 62-3 season, I scored 14 goals in 27 games. 1 in 2 right in the start. And then cricket was out the window and that was it. And the rest is history. It's quite remarkable, really, when you think.
And it was in the spotted. No one all the way through school spotted you as a striker.
No, although I did score a goal. I played for the youth. The record at home about playing for our youth team abroad in Holland in a tournament, and we got to the final. I scored 3 goals amongst all of them. We scored about 13 goals in the whole build-up. But 2 of the goals were in the final. We won 2-0. I got both goals in the final. So and I was very two-footed. My dad taught me to kick with my left foot in the back garden in Chelmsford. And I think that was, funny enough, many years later, I said to Ron, what did you see in me? Why did you all of a sudden decide to play me up front? And he said, Geoff, he said, you like getting forward, he said, but you didn't like getting back. Which is a very, very funny answer.
I love it. So it's funny that we've got this as a question, but I've thought this a bit over the years about the 66 boys, and it's such an iconic moment that obviously it's sort of shaped you. And if people see you in the street, they don't think about, all those other trophies you won, and as you say, 2 other Wembley finals. And so do you ever think of this as sometimes a bit of a curse as well as an amazing moment in your life? Has it ever dawned on you? Oh, yeah, 66.
Not for 1 second.
All right.
Not for 1 single second.
Amazing.
When not for a second. People come up and remind me where they were, that we're doing. You realise how big it was. So never for a second. There's never been that. It's just unbelievable to be part of it. What we achieved. It's never not.
Great.
Not for 1 second.
Great. I shall never think of it again.
Don't ask me that question again.
No, I never ask you. Exactly. Yeah. Can you remember, I mean, I guess everybody's the same here, but certainly me, I was working class kid kicking the football around in the street with my mates, and never to the level of proficiency of you or anybody you've ever played with. But can you cite it back to a particular moment? Is there any moment you can think of that was when the passion was ignited? Was it watching? Was it playing? Is there any moment you can think back? Yeah, that was.
I wouldn't think there's a moment. I think just grew up. My father was a professional player, Oldham and Rochdale, Bristol Rovers, and I didn't support anybody. Just too busy playing in the streets, in the playground, on the parks, and grew up playing that. The thing is, when I was 15, about school leaving age, it was never been my intention to become a professional footballer. I think I want to be a footballer. But what happened was, again, an interesting story. A friend of my father, called Jock Redfern, he wrote to West Ham for a trial, unbeknownst to me and my dad. And they saw, I went for the trial, they saw something in me, and I joined the club straight from school.
So was he a youth manager? Had he seen you in the street?
No, he was just a neighbour or friend of a dad. Saw something in me. It was never on my radar, thinking that, well...
Imagine if he'd never written that letter.
Yeah, just astonishing.
And then you signed that multi-million-pound contract back in... I mean...
Well, first, talking about multi-million-pound contracts, my first wage at West Ham was about £7 a week. Yeah.
I remember seeing the contract, and then extra time for the winter, and bring your own boots as well.
Correct, yeah.
I mean,
We laugh a lot. I laugh at everything in the past.
Today's wages, I mean, what do you think of that sort of, as a player, if Geoff Hurst was playing today, and getting these guys behind me, played for passion. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about, it was winning the World Cup, playing for England, crossing the white line, 3 o'clock every Saturday, or whoever you're playing for, and playing for the heart. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about any endorsements.
Well, it wasn't about money or endorsement, because we look back, even at the time, in those medieval days, as I often joke, my first wage was £7. When we won the World Cup, then I was in the first team and scoring regularly. We won 2 cups. And Bobby Moore was on £140 a week, about £7 a year. I slightly behind him in terms of development. I was on about £90 a week, and I went to a rise. Moore was on 140. I'm now a World Cup player. In those days, it was a summer and winter money. It was £20 in the winter and £16 in the summer at that period. So I went to see Ron Greenwood and asking for a rise. And he said, well, yeah, Bobby's on £20 and £15. He's on £20 and £18 in the summer. I was on £14 and £15 in the summer. I said, I want the same as him. He's not a better player than me in the summer. It's just ridiculous. So I eventually got the same money as him and went to £7 a year, wow, winning the World Cup.
and tell me, I mean, I've asked all the old players, I mean, it's the deepest, darkest December, you're playing in the middle of nowhere, you're bog snorkeling on the pitch. I mean, what's it like trying to play football in those old pitches back in the 60s? I mean, it must have been unbelievable. It's something
you just got used to. That was fairly normal. And you look at some of the games you played, every pitch after September, October was muddy. I've got some fantastic pictures at home with congratulations to other players and myself, hugging each other after a goal had been scored, absolutely caked from head to foot in mud. And West Ham, around about September, October, when the grass had gone, apart from the corner flags, we used to train on Friday morning around the cinder track, and they had a sign on the pitch saying, keep off the grass. I mean, it was just...
There wasn't any air.
There. Somebody sent me a lovely picture the other day which classified how muddy it was. It was Jim McGree's first game for West Ham at Man City. In those days, we could go to Man City and we could win 5-1. Jimmy got 2, I got 2, and Ronnie Boyce scored the 5th. And they've got some lovely pictures of Jimmy and I hugging each other, completely caked in mud. It was, and that you look at that. Say somebody showed me a clip of that, the goals we scored. Absolutely, it was like floodplain. It was just we were diving headers and skidding them out 5 yards on our chest. After Jimmy got a goal, I scored a headed goal, a diving header, which finished up over about a 5 year skid.
Which is why all these shirts we're selling now from the 60s have all been washed.
As opposed to the ones. Keep a photo match. Yeah, absolutely.
You said before about the neighbour and getting a trial. What would you have done? What was on your radar in terms of, what job you'd have done if you hadn't become a footballer? Did you think about that?
Well, not really. I think it's, looking back, look at my grandchildren now, looking at the time they're leaving school or what they're doing, it is quite a difficult time for kids to transition from school to a working environment. So that was I never thought much about it really, or I never considered what I was going to do at all. Not for a second. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be a player. I want to be a whatever. So not at all.
That's a good job about that letter then, isn't it?
It is, yes. But it's amazing. My story really is quite amazing in many respects because those coincidences. Yeah. Jimmy Greaves getting injured. I mean, Jimmy was described as a genius by a Spurs fan, an unbelievable player. And there's no way had he not been injured against the French, would I have started at the quarter-final. And that was very sad for Jimmy, one of our greats not being around for the final. But that was purely luck. But I was in a good frame of mind. I didn't start, no subs in those days. I didn't start the tournament, sat on the bench against Uruguay. But I was happy. I never thought I'd play for England. That's another thing. It was never on my radar. People talk about possibly playing for England these days. That was never on my radar. I sat on the bench, but I was as happy and as comfortable to be part of a 22-man squad that's hosting a World Cup. And I was in the right frame of mind when my turn came. And this happens in life, where things don't go for them and they're losing discipline. We've seen them in all walks of life. But that was never the case for me. I was just happy to be on the bench. And of course, my chance came and I was ready, and of course I took it.
Fine. Yeah.
Didn't you ever?
Sort of.
We'll talk about some of the other players now. In the changing room back then, who would be the sort of lively one? Who are the pranksters? Who are the guys keeping it all moving outside of the game?
I think, first of all, I'd say that the players that Alf had got together over those 3 were all very tough, straightforward characters. In terms of, I think Borley was probably a bit of a comic, really, very much so. Bobby Charlton, very quiet. Martin Peters, very quiet. Big Jack was a real character, of course, at the Ireland job and after dinner speaking. Nobby was a real character. I wouldn't say there's any Ray Wilson was a fantastic character and one of the best looking left backs we've ever had. But all strong. But I wouldn't say anybody sticks out. Borley probably he was a bit of a joker, probably above everybody else.
So if you're all around the 66 crowd on a WhatsApp group these days or whatever, social media, who would be sending all the stupid, chaotic texts? Would that be Borley?
It would be Borley, yes, Borley. Yes, absolutely Borley above everybody else, yeah.
And talking about obviously the photograph there behind us, I should reference that there's a photograph, or a painting on the left-hand side here of the.
It's a piece of graffiti.
Art of a famous moment after the final. So Bobby's on the shoulders of the team with their cup sort of thing. That's what we're referencing here. But talking about the squad, so obviously there's 22 players. So obviously only living to play. There's no subs, as we mentioned back in those days. You get your chance, obviously, with Jimmy being injured. Any sort of ill will with the other team squad players that never got on, sort of thing. So they all part of, because obviously didn't get a medal. Not till much later on, of course. But after the final, the Royal Garden Hotel, I think you're celebrating there. Yeah. And any sort of ill will then, or just
none whatsoever, because of the strength of the team and the characters and the management. There was never any ill will about the players that didn't play a game at all, not for 1 second. And when we played golf those years later, it was the whole squad. It wasn't just the 11 players. It was everybody who had been involved who wanted to play golf.
You must have been happy they got a medal, albeit years later. They got one.
And that was wrong as well. Compared to things that were wrong at the time, as there were many. The whole.
No, you must have got a medal that afternoon. I mean, just 11.
No, the committee did. It was.
No, but the 11 medals were struck, and it was
it's astonishing. Yeah. That was the time, and I look back with all this stuff we're talking about with great amusement. It was a time we played in the medieval times. I often joke about. It was how it was.
I think this one's probably an easier one, and we talked about Thomas Tuchel earlier and the current squad and the different dynamic and how he's going about it. How do you rate their chances this summer?
Well, you had to be positive as a player in the past. as a character, and that's me. So it wouldn't surprise me, it'd be a shock to me if we won the World Cup. And I always think positively as a player and as a fan, yeah, we can do it. What I do like is the way he appeared to have handled the Jude Bellingham issue, where it appeared it appeared, you don't know, but he didn't pick him for one of the games. And that seemed to me something that would have happened in our time if somebody stuck their head above the parapet and got too big for their boots. They would soon either be brought down or they wouldn't be involved in the 22-man squad. And that was one of the fundamental important issues of our time. So I see that as part of something that I admire, which could have an impact on the way the team plays and the way they get results. And over the years, we may have touched on this, but over the years, there have been instances where the management of the national side has not been perhaps strong enough and allowing one or two players who appear to be bigger than their boots to show off. And I think that's, without you go into it in detail, but I wouldn't, but I think that certainly happened to an extent over a few management issues.
I think there's every person watching this podcast would say the same thing over the years.
But it's pretty evident. I think it's pretty evident. You're going to look at behaviour, play, results, behaviour. It's not hard to spot. It is not hard to spot somebody that thinks they're too big for it or don't want to turn up or want to turn up late or they're out of order. It ain't hard to spot, and it's not hard to deal with if you're strong enough to deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Listen, there's not, I have to say, nothing wrong being runners-up. Scotland in the final against England. It's like, we'll take it. And you runners up. That could be I mean, they say, what do you think of our chances? Not winning, get out of the first round.
Well, let me say first of all, I mean, my second game is against Scotland, my first goal. It's a great country. It's a fantastic country. Naturally, the football is not quite as powerful as the Premier League, but I'm a great supporter of the country, the people. I mean, I bumped into a few Scots, or they bumped into me over the years as well, probably. Oh. So I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted that you're in a World Cup, and I want to wish you good luck.
Yeah, no.
I'd love to meet you in the final and stuff you 4-0.
I've worked for me.
But I think a good World Cup really we want them all in. I mean, the first World Cup I can remember growing up, because obviously that age was 78, and obviously we weren't there then. And I cheered Scotland all the way, and my granny's Scottish, and Archie Gemmell, and having, and the Irish are great. The support when the Irish are going to Welsh.
Exactly the same. The Welsh, the Irish, in all sports, and the Scots
support.
Want to see them do well, very much so, yeah. In all sports, not just football, rugby and so on. So good luck.
Yes.
I'm going to the first Scotland game anyway, so I'll be cheering you on, mate. Don't worry about that. So we've got to talk, you mentioned earlier, we've got to talk about Mbappe and your record. Obviously, he equalled it in the last World Cup. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, he came up with about 10 minutes to go in the game, and he got 3. And I phoned my agent, or he phoned me, I'm not sure, saying, well, this is interesting. What are we going to say? But I do jokingly say now, when that comes up in theatre shows and chats and discussions with people ask me the same question. What do you think about Mbappe scoring a hat-trick? And I say, I really don't give a shit. I said, they got beat. I'm sure Mbappe would have given his 3 goals away for France to have actually won it. Listen, I've got 3 goals. The most important thing of the England team winning it is the team winning it. I played a part in that, but it's no good me scoring 3 and getting beat. And 2 of his were penalties, by the way. So does he care?
Thing is,
I mean, and at the back end of it, he's an absolutely unbelievable player. Absolutely a fantastic player.
His hat-trick doesn't have your backdrop, Wilson home. We chatted earlier on today. The chap we mentioned obviously is the famous photograph of you scoring the 4th goal, and the score's 3-2, and someone saying to you, "Hang on a minute, it's only 3-2."
Oh, you remember that story? Yeah.
It's like
the famous iconic picture of me scoring the goal. Unbelievable where the camera was, and the ball's still in the picture on its way into the net, and the score says 3-2. I bumped into somebody a few weeks ago. He said the score was 3-2. I thought the score was 4-2. I actually swore, but I'm not going to swear. And I said, "Are you stupid? That's the ball on the way going into the net for the 4th." I mean,
Oh, that's hilarious. That is hilarious.
Fantastic.
We got to talk about VAR. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, you can't have a football discussion these days without VAR.
I apologise for that. I've got some good responses on this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, what do you think of it? And in relation to your famous goal and you know the goal line technology and whatnot.
Have we a VAR type? It would show quite clearly and concisely that my ball was well over the line. Let's get that straight to start with. I think what happened many years ago, not my goal, but there was a goal when England played Germany, I think, and I think was it Frank Lampard scored that goal.
God, yeah.
I was at the game on the touchline the other side. The linesman's the other side, just closer to the incident. The ball bounced halfway between the goal line and the back of the net. You've never seen, and I think perhaps from that, and we finished up losing the game as well. Maybe from that instance, not my time, they started to bring in VAR. I think one of the most important things with VAR is it doesn't interrupt the game. And I think that the goal line technology is terrific.
Yeah.
Because in or out, the ref looks at his watch, in or out, bang, done. What we see now when there's a foul or an offside and they can't make their minds up, they go off the pitch for about 10 minutes. So the fans can't celebrate, the players can't celebrate. They're making as many, if not more mistakes now with this so-called technology. I think it is absolutely, I'm not going to swear, awful. I mean, awful. It does not do the game any favours at all. You know, his shoelace was offside, his elbow was offside.
Yeah.
And you got to wait and go off. I just think that's nonsense.
Yeah. Again, I think there'll be many fans watching that. I would totally agree with you.
Well, when I talk to a group of people in my speeches and stuff, 95% of them will say, yeah, they all agree with it. It is something that the general public, the fans, the important fans, just hate.
Yeah.
And you've got to consider when you put something on, is the audience, the fans, what's good for them, and this is not good.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I've been to games. We've all been to games. I was waiting to see what's happening before we can jump up and down. I mean,
It's the beauty about it. It's a goal. People would celebrate. Fantastic. Taking out of the game is just sensational. It's stupid.
Yeah. We're talking about
So you
advances
get
and
the message.
I got the message. Yeah, just about. And talking about the modern game and current players, there's definitely a dearth of number 9s these days. I mean, it isn't the same as it was before. You've got false 9s and, you know, people dropping in and swapping places and going deep and all that sort of thing. Is there a striker around at the moment that you would say, yeah, that is my kind of striker? It's a bit like I was. Is there anybody like you that's currently in the game?
I wouldn't say necessarily current in the game. I've been asked this question over the years. Personally, I would think nobody's exactly the same. You've only got to tell by a guy walks or runs that you can tell immediately who he is. Forget the face. You can tell immediately. The person probably I would say maybe the closest to me over the years would be Alan Shearer. I would think same kind of style and gait and head good in the air, good strong feet. I wouldn't pick anybody out locally or currently that I would say is close to me, but we're all different in many. That's the beauty of the game, human nature. We're all different in our, and noticeably different when people watch them walk, talk, speak, act. You can tell immediately that's so and so. That's so and so.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he'd be delighted to hear that. And he, like you, he didn't mess around with finishing either. He wanted to make sure he hit the net properly.
He did. Yes,
Proper Roy the Rovers.
Something I never asked you, I don't think you asked you before, but obviously you're one of very few footballers who were knighted. Obviously, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth no longer with us. What was it like? That I don't think I would ask you about that. Being knighted by the Queen that many years ago.
it was a surprise. The process is they call you up and say, we are considering now knighting you. You have the opportunity, this is as much as I can recall the conversation, the opportunity to refuse it or words to that effect. If you accept what we're going to do, nothing will happen now, but in about a month's time, then it will be all confirmed and agreed, and somebody will call you, the press will know, there will be answered the press and so on. But I was quite surprised, and naturally, it was something I'd never dreamed about, and thought initially it was a wind-up. So when the call came a month later to say it absolutely concrete, I was downstairs, my wife was upstairs, and I ran upstairs shouting, it's true, it's true. And I think at that stage I had very little clothes on. So it was quite a shock, and it's a great thing, and it does pose an interesting question how people approach you. They say, "Do I call you Geoff or Sir Geoff?" And my stock answer, which I said, "No," I said, "You can call me Geoff. Only my children call me Sir Geoff."
I like that. I like that. Fantastic. Look, I mean, the 1960, regardless of when, rather than if we ever win it again, the 66 will always be talked about. It's an iconic moment in British history. History, as you say, it isn't just a football match. It defined an era. Those pictures, the first colour TV pictures and all that sort of stuff.
Whether the match, of course, wasn't in colour, was it?
Exactly.
Years later,
they transferred it. When future generations talk of this, how would, if you had one thing to say about it, how would you want them to remember this momentous occasion? What would you want them to think about when they think of the 1966 final?
What a tremendous group of players we had, which was Alf Ramsey, and how he got people out who didn't want to be part of it. A tremendous group of players who I just loved to death, every single one of them, which is unusual, really. A group of 22 people, and certainly 11 players, you'd think, well, there's somebody I didn't quite get on with, and there's not one single person. An unbelievable group of individual players who, forget whether we won it or not, just fantastic people who I spent a long, long time with over the many years, not during the World Cups, of course, but 5 or 6 years later, still playing, and then many, many, many years later, enjoying a game of golf.
Fantastic
Group of players, and to talk about it makes you feel very sad looking at them now and talking about them. Just astonishing, really astonishing.
But I think from an auction house point of view, I mean, we're having this big auction coming up. I mean, the memorabilia is still sought after. I mean, obviously 11 players played the game. The memories are there, but they want to own parts of the shirt, making a world record price back in 2021. Martin Spare behind us there. So, the market is still as strong, and everyone remembers. I mean, they really do. I mean, it's what an afternoon on home soil.
It's quite remarkable. I mean, I went to an auction. It wasn't just an auction, it was a function in London. 1,000 people in one of the big hotels, mainly raising money for charity, and there's some seriously, seriously wealthy people in the room. I was last up, and what they did, they had about 22 Red England shirts, and it was a stand-up, sit-down auction, if you remember that. So the 22, it started off about 200 or 300 quid. If you can't afford £300, sit down. Nobody moved. Can't afford £500, 1,000 still stood up. Wow. What? It finished up, 12 people bought the shirts for £750 each.
Wow, amazing.
Unbelievable. I mean, I was there, I just signed them afterwards, just unbelievable. 20 odd people, £750.
That is the way that this nation thinks about that game and that day.
Yeah.
And
that's a typical example, isn't it?
Yeah.
These years later.
Without a doubt. I mean,
unbelievable.
I said I was born in 1970, so I can remember 1986 World Cup, which was infamous for other reasons, the hand of God and everything. But it must have been a pull-out from the Daily Mirror or the Sun or whatever it was back in the day. But it was a double-page spread. It was all of you guys. It was just the 11. And every World Cup, I always played it on BBC Two in black and white, the game. And I've watched that game through so many times. Now, I can't imagine now kids growing up watching, even when or if we win it, even the Euro finals 8 years ago, the last two finals, them watching those games, because there's something very different about what you all did. And I do think you defined an era. So, to have you here today telling us about this, and, I'm very grateful for it, Geoff. It's been absolutely incredible. And
sitting me opposite this fantastic picture of the lads and doing this interview, it brings home to me how unbelievable.
Well, I think we've taken up off your time, Geoff. Thank you very much. And just before we go and wrap up the podcast, just to say that, as we mentioned before, obviously we're having the auction, 1966 Memorabilia. Geoff has thrown some lots into that auction, and I'd like to say there's some very nice artwork and a very rare print as well in there that will come to the auction. So Geoff's selling about 20 or 30 lots in the 2nd of June auction. So I should say thank you, Geoff, for joining Tim and I
enjoyed it today.
This podcast this afternoon. And look out for the auctions happening all in May and June and Bud's World Cup summer.